Blue Jays on Sportsnet. Brought to you by Home Hardware and Building Center locations. Homeowners helping homeowners with expert advice. And by the 2013 Honda Civic, Canada's best-selling car 15 years in a row. Honda, the official vehicle of the Toronto Blue Jays.
Welcome to Rogers Center. This is the final game of a three-game series, the rubber game against the New York Yankees. Joe Girardi has his ball club here at Rogers Center. Now it's time to take a look at the starting lineups. They are brought to you by Quaker State, real, durable oil. For Joe Girardi's lineup, top of the order is Brett Gardner. Right behind him is Derek Jeter, and Jeter has 3,310 career hits, 10th all time. Next on the list is Eddie Collins at 3,314, and Alfonso Soriano. Big night last night, 2 home runs, his 400th career home run, and he's had a great run over his last 15 games, 25 RBIs, most in the major leagues, and they're set to take on Todd Redmond for the first time.
Todd making his 9th start of the season, his first career start against the Yankees. Had a little hiccup in his last outing down in Houston, but should be able to bounce back. And Todd does one thing very well. He challenges hitters. He's going to come after him with his best pitch, which is a fastball, and he's not afraid to go after everybody. So we'll see how he fares here tonight.
Take a look at the defense in the outfield. Lots of speed in the outfield. Rajay Davis in left, Anthony Gose in center, and Moises Sierra in right. On the infield, it's Laurie Reyes, Goins, and Encarnacion from third to first, and J.P. Arencibi is behind the plate for Todd Redmond. Anthony Gose has got terrific speed. He can really cover a lot of ground. He's got a strong arm, and today all the young outfielders are out throwing before batting practice, trying to work on their accuracy, so we'll keep an eye on that tonight. Brett Gardner will step in. Gardner doubled and scored in his first at bat last night. Here he takes ball one. Gardner finished up the ball game 1 for 5 after a fast start. He really had a rough time. There's that fastball up in the zone, 90 miles an hour. Once again, it's not lighting up the radar gun.
As you watch Todd Redmond from the center field camera, you'll see that once in a while he'll drop his elbow in his delivery, and the ball can only do one thing when you drop your elbow. It's got to shoot up. Now, he may be throwing up there intentionally, but usually you want to start the game down in the zone and then run. You can see where his elbow right there. He's leading with his elbow. That's kind of slinging, and it causes you to keep the ball up in the zone.
Redmond ahead, 1-2. Missed up in the way. Same spot with every pitch. You don't really know at this point whether that's intentional or he's just not on top of the ball yet. Strike 3 count. Couldn't pull the trigger. The only pitch down in the zone. And Gardner takes it for called strike 3.
Great location there. Not changing pitches. Same fastball. But this time he locates it in a great spot down and away and freezes Brett Gardner for the first out.
Just couldn't pull the trigger. He'd seen everything up and away. And that pitch is right down around the knees. First strikeout for Redmond. We're going to talk a lot about pitching tonight with Redmond and Hiroki Kuroda, kind of 2 different styles of pitchers. Derek Jeter steps in. You mentioned Jeter with 3,310 hits. That's 10th all time. He is the only Yankee to collect 3,000 hits. Breaking ball for a strike. It's 1-1. I spoke to Jeter before batting practice today, and I said, "How you doing?" He goes, "Boy, it's hard to catch up."
Yeah, I had a talk with him myself, and he said it's the first time in my career I've been hurt. He says, "I'm not used to this."
There's a line drive to right. That's going to get down and go down into the corner. Sierra's got a good arm. He winds up and throws it back to the infield, but Jeter has a double. A one-out double for Derek Jeter. He shoots it down the right field line. I've been watching that swing for his entire career.
Yeah, he just keeps climbing closer and closer on that list of all-time greats. Keeps his head down. Great concentration and focus.
Sierra plays it well in the corner. You can see the strength of his arm. He made a good throw down where the cutoff man could make a play on it, but Jeter slid in with his first double of the season. Curtis Granderson batting third tonight. Granderson is the DH. The Yankees are kind of dinged up. Robertson Cano is out of the lineup. He got hit by a pitch last night. And his replacement, Eduardo Nunez, was in the original lineup tonight. He has since been scratched. He's out as well. Anderson hits it in the air to left. Rajay Davis moving back. Jeter's going back to tag at second, and Davis will make a strong throw to keep Jeter in place. So that'll bring to the plate the cleanup hitter, Alfonso Soriano. He had a big day in his first two at-bats yesterday.
Well, he crushes that first home run, almost the third deck. Comes back down in the second deck. Next time, not quite so much. Hit it real high. I'm not sure he even thought it was out of there, but it hits off the top of the fence, and he gets home run number 2, picks up his 4th RBI of the game.
His second home run was his 400th career home run. He became the 7th player to hit his 400th career home run in a Yankee uniform. 2 outs, Jeter at second base. Goes after the first pitch and pops it down the right side. There is Robinson Cano with his hand bandaged. X-rays last night were negative. As you can see, he's got quite a pad on that to keep swelling down. He got hit by a pitch from Jay Happ in the first inning. So the Yankees, I'm sure, breathed a sigh of relief when they found out the X-rays were negative.
It's still going to be a little bit of time with a wrap and pressure wrap on his hand like that. Here's the pitch to Robinson Cano off of Jay Happ, and you can see Cano just wasn't really anticipating the ball up and in. He starts his swing, and the ball really was just off the plate. It wasn't like it was way up and in, so he kind of hurt himself in that regard.
0-2. Cut out and miss. Redmond strikes out Soriano to end the inning. 2 strikeouts for Redmond. We'll go to the bottom of the first, top of the order for the Blue Jays. Nothing more. Talking with Pete Walker. So let's take a look at John Gibbons' lineup for the Blue Jays. Top of the order, Jose Reyes, the shortstop, will lead things off. He's put up good numbers against Hiroki Kuroda. He's 7 for 15 with a pair of triples. And remember, he's still looking for his first triple of the season. Also, J.P. Arancibia, the catcher, down in the 7th spot. He, too, has 7 hits against Kuroda, a pair of doubles, a home run. He's driven in 2. So they're looking to get to Hiroki Kuroda, who is having another fine season for New York.
38-year-old right-hander's making his 27th start of the season. He's lost 3 of his last 4 starts, going 1-3 with a 4.39 ERA. With that being said, he's among the league leaders in earned run average, and he's just a tough competitor. He's one of the game's best pitchers, and he's kind of a guy that slips under the radar. He will show us tonight the art of pitching. He's one of the best.
He's got a good defense behind him, too. The Yankees have committed the third fewest errors in the American League. Soriano in left, Brett Gardner in center, the Gold Glover, Ichiro Suzuki in right. A couple of Gold Gloves on the left side, Alex Rodriguez and Derek Jeter. Mark Reynolds makes his first big league start at second. Lyle Overbay, the former Blue Jay, starting for the 100th time tonight at first base. Chris Stewart is behind the plate. Mark Reynolds finished out the game last night after Nunez was pinch run for. This is fourth game overall, first start at second base. Kuroda delivers a strike to Reyes. Reyes averaged just a couple ticks under 300. Hits this ball into center. Easy play for Brett Gardner, who coasts back and makes the catch. One down.
Scouting report for Hiroki Kuroda. You can see that he's a guy that just does such a good job of mixing up his pitches. Primarily a fastball pitcher, but he can throw that fastball in 4 different locations, so it's like it's got 4 different pitches in itself, and he'll take a little off his fastball at times. So it's really more than just those numbers show. The fact that he can take off something on his slider and his split finger.
Ryan Goins goes after the first pitch and drills it. That's going to go past Soriano all the way to the wall. Goins is headed for second. The throw comes back in. He'll stop there. His first pitch from Hiroki Kuroda in his young career, and he rips it to the alley in left center.
Ryan Goins just seeing the ball so well right now, making this big league transformation appear to be an easy one. Gets the ball up and just does what he's done his whole life. When you get a ball up, you're supposed to slap it to left.
He led the Eastern League in hits last year at 158 hits. That's his second big league double. So the Blue Jays have a runner in scoring position for Edwin Encarnacion. Got a pretty good pitch on the inside corner. Edwin went 0 for 3 last night. He had a line drive right back to the mound in the first inning that Andy Pettit snared before he fell back on the mound. Bounced foul. Here's one thing that we're going to talk about is the way Kuroda really controls the tempo of the at-bats. How does a pitcher do that?
First of all, it's about his balance. He always comes to a kind of a hesitation in the middle of his delivery, and what that's all about is getting his weight over his back foot directly above the rubber, and then he can transfer that energy straight towards the plate in a consistent basis.
Down and away.
It's not quite as noticeable out of the stretch as it is when he's in his windup. But we'll have a chance to take a real good look at it over the course of this game while Kuroda's in there.
Kuroda working out of the stretch with Goins at second base. Just off the plate outside, and Encarnacion wouldn't chase. Edwin, without the presence of Jose Bautista in the lineup, hasn't had an awful lot of good pitches to hit lately. But he's taken his walks, that's for sure.
You saw in the Houston series how they were just basically pitching around him. And you're right, he's taken a lot of walks.
Wouldn't chase.
Tough pitch to lay off of, but good hitting right there. Edwin having a good look.
Bautista, of course, most often hits ahead of Encarnacion, but when you've got them back to back, it really poses quite a problem for the opposing pitcher. Sometimes the best protection you can have is put a guy on base ahead of him. Full count, 1 out. Jeter knocks it down, throws from his knees, skips it across the field, and makes a fine play. Boy, Derek Jeter, with all of his experience, never panicked once he felt that ball secured in his glove. He threw from his knees and had plenty of time.
Just aware of his environment. Here he's on turf, and he knows that if he can get to the ball and knock it down, now he just has to throw it and one hop it over to Lyle Overbay. And that's something he will practice. believe it or not, he will practice throwing a couple one-hoppers to the first baseman just to see where he wants to locate that bounce.
Derek Jeter playing in his 126th game here at Rogers Center. Used to the surroundings. Adam Lind chases that first pitch off the plate outside.
Good movement on that sinker right there by Kuroda. Ball running down and away from Adam Lind.
Bounced in the dirt. Stewart took a little while to locate it, but he kept it right near his feet. Chris Stewart starting for the 79th time behind the plate. He's done a good job, and as we've talked about throughout this series, there's a pretty tough panel of critics over in that Yankee dugout. Joe Girardi, the manager, and the bench coach Tony Pena, both outstanding catchers in their playing days. So they don't let much slide when they evaluate their catchers.
Now they both speak so highly of Chris Stewart and his ability to call a game.
Ball on a strike. There's that splitter. You can see the pattern of pitches. First pitch was outside. He got him to chase. So right then, Kuroda takes that information and files it away for the rest of the at-bat.
My way of thinking is if you see a guy chase more than once, there's a good chance he'll chase more than twice. So until he shows you that he's going to make an adjustment, you might as well stay with the same pitch. We'll see if Adam makes an adjustment or Kuroda does.
Adam Lind is just 1 for 11 against Hiroki Kuroda. I'm going to start with a new set of signs. 1-2. Didn't chase that one, and he made that same pitch as he did with the first pitch of the at-bat. And this is pitching, information gathering as you go along. Kuroda sizing up Adam Lind.
One thing Kuroda does so well is he doesn't get into any kind of pattern. He will always mix things up.
Hasn't thrown a strike yet, and it's 2-2. But that's pitching.
Well, that's just it. It's got to appear to the hitter that's a strike. It might appear like it's going to be in the zone and then tail out of the zone or drop out of the zone or run in out of the zone. But that's the whole point. You want to make it appear to the hitter and keep him off balance enough and then get him to chase.
Here's the 2-2. Another split of this one in the dirt. Goins holds his ground. Wasn't really sure where the ball was, and Stewart kept it close enough to home to keep their runner from advancing. Brett Lawrie is on deck. It's a full count. We're in the bottom of the first of a scoreless ball game. Ryan Goins with his second double of his young career. Still hasn't thrown a strike.
Did not give in right there. Adam Lind did a great job of adjusting to the two previous pitches. But then when it comes full count, you got to protect the plate. Anything close, you've got to take a pass at. The splitter just breaks out of the zone down. What makes that such a great pitch is it's breaking down, and usually you hit on top of it. You get that ground ball you're looking for.
Takes it in the dirt and walks. Adam Lind with a 2-out walk.
Good at bat for Adam Lind.
So with 2 outs and 2 on, Brett Lawrie will step in. His numbers are getting better and better all the time. He was hitting 199 on July 22nd. Since then, a 341 clip that's raised his average to 261. OPS is much improved. 4 homers, 17 RBIs, and the punch hitting totally different now that he's calmed his body down, just uses his hands.
It really is. It's given him a chance to actually drive the ball to right field. He's not pulling off pitches, and You're seeing a Brett Lawrie that so much of the hype about him, he's starting to emerge as that kind of player. Defensively, just been outstanding.
He lays off that first pitch, and Blue Jays right now have put Kuroda on notice. Hey, we're not chasing. Got to throw us a strike.
Boy, if you do have a team that chases, he will stay there all day. Yu Darvish does such a great job of not throwing strikes, but he gets the hitters to think they're in the zone, and he just lives out of the zone.
Ball and a strike to the Jays' third baseman. Hammered to left field. Soriano. It's over his head against the wall. Goins comes in to score. Lynn's being waved around. Jeter won't have a throw to the plate, and Brett Lawrie delivers a 2-run, 2-out double. Lynn had a good at bat, and Lawrie got a strike and hammered it.
See how quiet he is. He just uses those hands, does not panic. His hands go out after the ball, and he just hooks it. Line drive showing his strength. 2 RBIs for Brett Lawrie.
35 on the season for Lawrie. That was his 14th double. Rajai Davis. And he gets hit. Kuroda threw it up and in. The Yankees, of course, Cano got hit last night by Jay Happ. Curtis Granderson nearly got hit by Happ, another inside pitch, and Rajai Davis gets plunked on the first pitch of his at bat. Fastball catches him right on the back of the left arm. Larry Rothschild, the pitching coach, has made his way toward the mound. Blue Jays have been patient against Kuroda. He's thrown 21 pitches here in the first inning.
Hiroki Kuroda seems to be one of those guys that struggles more on the road. At home, pitches quite well, and it's kind of a crazy stat because it's a lot more hitter-friendly ballpark in Yankee Stadium than most road. But what I attribute to that is the fact that he gets used to his home mound. And once you're comfortable there, you can make the pitches. If you make the pitches as a pitcher, it doesn't matter what ballpark you're pitching in, you're going to get your ground balls and strikeouts.
J.P. Arancibia takes his strike. All of those home starts, of course, on the same mound. And when he's on the road, he's pitching on a different
Everyone's
mound
different.
every time. Yep. So Blue Jays have taken a 2-0 lead. Brett Lawrie delivering with 2 outs. Arancibia's had a good run against Kuroda. He's 7 for 18 coming into this game. Been a rough road for him lately, hitting under 150 over his last 26 games. Didn't mean to, and fouls it off the wall up the right side. Brett Lawrie at second, Rajai Davis at first. 2 runs in. Pair of doubles here in the first inning for the Blue Jays. Ryan Goins and Brett Lawrie. Strike 3 called. Arancibia can make it to first. Stewart's throw is off Arancibia. Lawrie comes in to score. Rajai Davis is being waved home. Here's the throw to the plate. It is not in time. What a turn of events for the Blue Jays. A called strike 3 got away from Chris Stewart, and 2 runs scored.
That's why we watch baseball, because we see things that we don't see every day. It looked like Chris Stewart was crossed up on a ball that was clearly a strike. But it tails back, and he kind of backhands this ball. It hits off his heel. You can see that right there. It's like he wasn't expecting it to do that. It was right down the middle.
You're right. It looked like he was expecting a breaking ball because he had his glove positioned to catch a breaking ball. Then his throw goes off of Aaron Seavey down the right field line, and both runs score. Davis without a slide.
The first baseman Overbay's got to get off the line one way or the other and give the catcher a target to throw to.
Moises Sierra pops it behind the Yankees dugout out of play.
You can see he's right down the line, and that's where Stewart throws it. And he's got to either give him a big target off the line towards second base or clearly towards the stands in the right field side.
The one thing that really compounded that situation for both Stewart and Overbay is the fact he had to run back up against the backstop and get it. It's a strikeout, a pass ball, and the run scores on the air charge to the catcher. Base hit up the middle. Sounded like it broke his bat. Sierra has a base hit. Third hit of the inning. Boy, it goes back to that Adam Lind at bat. When you think about it, 2 outs, Lind worked for the walk, and that set up the double, and now the Blue Jays have made it a big inning. This is down around the label. It breaks the bat of Sierra, but he's so strong he can fight it off up the middle into center. Lind never got a pitch in the strike zone, but laid off that split finger pitch in the dirt to work Kuroda for the walk. That set up Brett Lawrie's 2-run double. Sierra with a base hit. 9th man to bat in the inning, Anthony Gose.
Yesterday's game, the Yankees spotted their pitcher Andy Pettitte with a 4-run lead in the first inning, and the game was really out of hand right there. We'll see if Todd Redmond can respond the same way. Not too many times you get a 4-run lead.
That sounded like it broke his bat. Ichiro Suzuki is over to end the inning, but the Blue Jays put up a 4 spot. A pair of doubles, a walk, a hit batter. 4-0 Jays after 1.
Jays on Sportsnet, brought to you by the 2013 Honda Civic, Canada's best-selling car 15 years in a row. Honda, the official vehicle of the Toronto Blue Jays.
You can see the roof is starting to move back and open up. It was closed at the start of this ball game. They have gotten the news that the weather is okay, so they'll crank it open. Alex Rodriguez has created a stir as he made his way to the batter's box. Rodriguez has homered twice in this series. Now Todd Redmond's pitching with the lead now. Rodriguez making his 17th start of the season at third base. Late on that fastball. Todd Redmond, Jack mentioned, 28 years old. His first year with the Blue Jays. He was originally drafted and signed with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was drafted by the Kansas City Royals in 2003, but that was in the 40th round, so he chose to go to junior college, went to St. Pete Junior College the next year, and was drafted and signed with the Pirates. He was traded from Pittsburgh to the Braves in spring training of 2008. Strike three call. Rodriguez didn't like it, but it looks like it caught the corner. Quinn Wolcott, the umpire, rings up Rodriguez. That's the first out of the inning.
Third strikeout, and you can see the great location right here, down and away. Had real good bite at the very end. Third strikeout for Todd Redmond.
The Yankees are a veteran-laden ball club, and this is the first look they've had at Todd Redmond. Oftentimes, experienced players like to have information about pitches they're facing, and sometimes a guy can sneak up on them. You throw enough strikes early, and before you know it, you'll be in the 6th or 7th inning before they have any information on you.
That's just it. You don't want to show them the kitchen sink in the first 2 or 3 innings. If you can get through the lineup with low pitch counts and quick at bats, second and third time around are a little tougher for a pitcher usually.
And Redmond's doing exactly that. He jumps ahead of Lyle Overbay 0-2. Overbay over the last few days has been battling the flu. Missed a couple of games. Starting to feel a little bit better. Breaking ball blocked by Aaron Sebia. Tampa Bay and the Yankees played a 3-game set down in St. Petersburg. The Rays took 2 of 3 against New York. The Jays and Yanks have split the first 2 of this series. Weekly hit towards second. Goins waits on it and throws Overbay out. 2 down.
Scouting report for Todd Redmond. Mostly fastballs, but again, it's locational fastballs that really matter. He will throw a slider occasionally, and he's got a good one tonight. That pitch right there that he got Overbay on was a good sinking fastball, but he struck out Rodriguez on the good slider.
This is the 9th start of the season for Todd Redmond. It is his 12th appearance overall. He worked out of the bullpen shortly before they moved him into their rotation. Mark Reynolds for the season has 17 homers with the Indians and the Yankees. Since he's come to New York, he's hit 2 home runs and has driven in 5. His second home run came last night in the 6th inning. Fouls it straight back our way.
The last couple pitches, Todd Redmond's kind of flying open with his front side, his left side, and his arms dragging. That's why, again, his elbow drops a little bit and the ball rises in the strike zone. Last couple pitches were up.
Pitchers have to understand their own mechanics and make the adjustments on the fly.
And then the only way you can understand it is repeat it over and over and over. And when you do, then you know what your body's telling you.
This is skied on the left side of the infield. Reyes and Laurie. It'll be Reyes the shortstop, and it took a long time to come down. But the inning is over. Good inning for Todd Redmond. Yankees down in order. You'll find on your radio. Primetime Sports with Bob McCown every weekday on Sportsnet 590. The Fan. Well, Blue Jays had a bat-around inning in the first. They scored 4 runs on 3 hits and an error. Jose Reyes flied out to center field his first time up. Reyes thought that ball was low. Had a lot of late movement on it. It's a ball on the strike. Hiroki Kuroda signed with the Dodgers in 2007, a 3-year, $35 million contract. Same spot. He pitched for the Hiroshima Carp in the Japanese League and actually pitched for Marty Brown, the Blue Jays AAA manager, who's down in Buffalo right now. Brown was the manager of the Carp. And Kuroda was always asking about the big leagues. What's the big leagues like? Who are the best teams? What's it like to pitch against those big league hitters? He's always curious about getting an opportunity to come to the major leagues, and he's been impressive. Hiroshima has a new ballpark that opened up in 2009. A gorgeous facility right downtown, and Marty Brown got the managing that before he came back over to the States. Two and two. Reyes just pokes at it down the right side. Suzuki over near the foul line makes the catch. 1 down. Fans, it's time now for our BlackBerry Sneak Peek stat of the game, brought to you by the new BlackBerry Z10 and Q10, built to keep you moving.
Take a look at the league leaders in ERA. You see Kuroda is number 4 coming into tonight's game. Pretty good company right there. Yu Darvish, another Asian pitcher with a similar type delivery.
Ryan Goins hit the first pitch in his first at bat for an opposite field double. Drilled it into power alley in left center. Came around to score the first run of the ball game. The phrase we always hear is a pitcher's ability to repeat his delivery, and Kuroda appears to be one of those guys. Here's the 1-1 to Goins. How much does that have to do with his command of the strike zone?
everything. It has everything to do with it. And what creates the ability to repeat is your balance, whether your body's flying open or not. And what a lot of these Asian pitchers learn at a young age is that hesitation at top of their delivery.
Ryan Goins says, what's the big deal about big league pitching? 2 for 2.
Here we go. You get to see some of the best pitchers in the game, all of these guys, Japanese pitchers, and look at where they are when they are at the top of their delivery. They all come to this position with a little pause. And what they're doing is getting their balance on the rubber directly towards home plate. Now they can use all that energy and go straight toward their target. It's very, very similar in all of those pictures. Good job.
That's our terrific videotape room to put that together. Mike Sparks and Pat Denarda's doing a great job giving us all those great shots of those terrific pictures. But it's all about balance and repetition. And when you think about it, you only get a chance to make 32 starts a season. You better refine your mechanics.
One thing that I can tell the listeners is a little truth about pitching is typically when pitchers' legs start getting tired, and it's later in the year, this time of year, where pitchers have pitched their maximum innings or approaching their maximum innings, in order to stay in the kind of shape they need to, they have to have their legs.
High and deep to left field. Soriano on the warning track, looking up. Home run, Edwin Encarnacion. Number 34. RBIs 98 and 99 for Double E.
That ball hit a lot like Soriano's second home run last night. High and just a few feet past the wall, but it went way up there. Watch the location of this pitch, right down Broadway. Downtown Marty Brown right there.
He didn't miss it. He hit it hard, high into the air, over the wall and left. Number 34 for Edwin. 6-0 Jays. Joe Girardi, his team had an early lead in last night's game. '99 RBIs on the season for Encarnacion. There's a strike on the knees.
It's funny. You got one of the best hitters in the lineup in Edwin Encarnacion. You make a mistake over and he shows you why you can't do that. And then Adam Lynn comes up and he's going, why are you painting the corners on me?
There's a splitter in the dirt. 2 balls and 2 strikes. Kuroda off to a rough start tonight. Not unlike his start against the Red Sox 2 starts ago. 5 2/3. He gave up 11 hits, a season high. 5 runs, but just 3 earned runs. Strike 3 called. Like a little cutter that caught the inside corner. Just the second strikeout for Kuroda.
Earlier I was talking about when a pitcher's legs get tired, the cause and effect of what happens. Typically a pitcher will start rushing with his body to compensate for his tired legs, and his arm will drag. And when your arm drags, the ball starts staying up. And everything goes wrong when your legs get tired. And I think that's part of the reason a lot of the Asian pitchers are taught this pause at the top to get their balance as a checkpoint all the time.
Brett Lawrie had a 2-run double his first time up. Another thing that has been a challenge for the Japanese pitchers coming to the major leagues is the 5-man rotation. They pitch once a week in the Japanese league. And oftentimes they wouldn't travel with the club when they went on the road if they weren't going to pitch. So the rigors of pitching in a major league's rotation a little bit more strenuous than that pitching in a Japanese league. And you're right, you can see he's rushing now. He's lost his rhythm. He's a little bit frustrated, giving up a 4 spot in the first and 2 in the second.
Kuroda's no different than a lot of the pitchers in baseball. Is if you're going to get them early, because once they find that rhythm and once they get accustomed to that field mound and everything starts to flow for them, then they can execute over and over and over. You can see there is that little hesitation position that they get to, and it's great balance right there. It's where you want to be.
Brett Lawrie has his second hit of the night. The Blue Jays have their hitting shoes on early against Hiroki Kuroda.
6 hits already for the Jays. And Brett Lawrie just taking this one right back up the middle. 2 real good at-bats for Brett Lawrie. Got in on him a little bit, but those are some pretty big pipes on that tattooed arms of his. He's able to just shoot it out to center field.
Yeah, he doesn't have to swing with 100% of his strength all the time. He can use his hands. I think he's learning that. He's had a good month.
It's been a very good learning month for Brett Lawrie. Chad Matola's worked so hard with him to just slow everything down and trust his hands. And I think it's starting to set home for him.
Rajay Davis got hit by a pitch his first time up. Matola continues to mentor the young players on this ball club, talking to everybody in between at bats. Anthony Gose lined out to right field his first time up.
For a lot of these young players, Chad Matola is a familiar name. He was their hitting coach in the minor leagues, so they know Chad.
Lawrie scampers back ahead of the throw. In fact, Chad Matola was at Las Vegas with J.P. Arancibia when he was the MVP of the Pacific Coast League. So there are quite a few players that have worked with Matola in the past. Davis drives it down the right side. That'll be well out of play. Curtis Granderson stopped a couple of young hitters, Anthony Gose and Kevin Pillar, and I spoke to Curtis about this conversation. I said, what were you talking about? He said, I was talking about staying connected with your body, using the bat and making sure you don't reach for that ball. There's the force out at second. The inning is over, but the Blue Jays add on a pair in the second. They have a 6-0 lead. Edwin Encarnacion with the damage here in the second. A 2-run home run. His 34th. Blue Jays up 6-0. City Royals. Game starts at 1:07 p.m. The first 5,000 kids 14 and under will receive a Blue Jays lunchbox. Call the Jays at 416-341-1234 to pick up your tickets, or you can order them online at BlueJays.com or stop by most Rogers Plus locations. Number 8 hitter is Ichiro Suzuki. Yankees trail by 6. Suzuki slices it down the left side into the seats. Ichiro Suzuki, of course, he has the single season hit record, 262 hits with the Mariners in 2004. Comes back from that inside pitch. He picked up his 4,000th career hit when you combine his hit total from Japan and that here in the major leagues. He did that against R.A. Dickey in New York the last time the Blue Jays were there. Brett Laurie snares that liner. Suzuki's retired, 1 down.
Suzuki's always been a guy to almost run out of the box while he swings, and he's gotten so many hits over his career by shooting the ball to left field. Right there. Brett Laurie's ready for him.
Defense, you guard against the well-hit balls, and that was a well-hit ball, and Laurie was positioned perfectly. Chris Stewart, the catcher, takes a strike. Strike 2.
Todd Redmond has nothing more important to do than come out and challenge the hitters. He's got 6 runs to work with, and you do not want to give anybody a free pass by walking him. He's been doing a good job of getting ahead. Spotted 4 runs in the first inning, comes out and has a 1-2-3 shutdown second inning. So far so good for Todd Redmond.
Yeah, this is where you almost have like a couple of free innings here.
Yep.
Just you can almost experiment, see how you can locate pitches. Made a good pitch there, and Stewart drives it to right. Easy play for Sierra. 2 down. Fans, if you want your baseball questions answered by our team of experts, email asktheexperts@sportsnet.ca. Then keep your eye out for the home hardware Ask the Expert segment later on in the game. And there's an expert in pitching right there in Mark Burley talking to a catcher, Josh Tolley. Tolley was out doing some good pregame work today, making some throws to second base in his full catcher's gear. He also had a nice chat with Tony Pena during batting practice, just picking his brain a little bit about some of the drills that Pena uses for his catchers.
Josh Tolley was out early the other day, and he saw Tony Pena working with young Austin Romine in all the extra work he was doing, and he suggested doing the same thing for himself today, blocking some balls and taking basically balls off a bat, which is a little different, but you had a good point about why they do that.
Yeah, but you don't know the spin of the ball coming off a fungo bat like you would if it's thrown. So it's really less predictable and more like a ball you might get in the course of a game. Austin Romine had a tough night here in the opener, blocking some balls. He missed a couple, and Tony Pena made sure that they worked on that. Right down Broadway. Full count. Todd Redmond made 1 big league appearance last year with Cincinnati. Derek Jeter waits on deck. Foul back. That start with Cincinnati was in August. It was August 18th against the Cubs. It was game 2 of a doubleheader. Cincinnati lost that game 9-7. But the interesting thing about that start was Redmond was just the 6th starting pitcher the Reds used all season last year.
Say that again, please.
Oh, tough one. Quinn Wolcott didn't like it. It was off the plate, and Gardner works Redmond for a 2-out walk. Yep, 6 starting pitchers all season last year utilized by the Reds, and they've only used 7 this year. How does that happen?
Well, Bronson Arroyo, one of those pitchers, recently came out in an article and described the fact that he's not a pitcher that is maximum effort. He says, I have a very fluid delivery, and he said, I'm able to repeat my delivery, and I don't have to use maximum effort, so I'm able to keep my innings up year in and year out. I have a good work ethic, and I stay strong. Pretty simple stuff if you can really execute it.
Sounds like you're talking about Mark Burley.
Yeah.
Same type of pitcher, smooth delivery, works quickly, throws a lot of pitches, not a max effort guy.
It's so important for young pitchers to understand the art of pitching, again, reflects keeping the hitter off balance. And you keep them off balance by changing speeds and locating. It is not necessary to throw 99. Of course, that's what scouts look for. They want to see that live arm and figure they can teach them. But there are so many kids that probably get overlooked that know how to pitch, and they can pitch in the 80s and low 90s by just changing speeds and locating their pitches.
It'd be hard for a Pedro Martinez to get drafted in this day and age. 0-2, 2 outs. Upstairs. Jeter ducks away. Blue Jays picked up Todd Redmond on the waiver wire March 22nd this spring. Baltimore had him and exposed him to waivers, and Blue Jays picked him up. Breaking ball outside. Well, this is the one thing you want to avoid if you're Todd Redmond. He had a 2-out walk to Brett Gardner. You don't want to encourage the Yankees by issuing those free passes.
No, because you put multi-runners on in one swing can get you right back in this ball game. And this ballpark shows that that's not a problem. Home runs are at a premium here at Rogers Center.
Jeter strikes out. That'll end the inning. So Redmond backs off the breaking ball. He has 4 strikeouts through 3 innings and a comfortable lead. Blue Jays have jumped all over the Yankees and Hiroki Kuroda. They have a 6-0 lead as they bat in the bottom of the 3rd. Hiroki Kuroda, you mentioned he played for the Hiroshima Carp in the Japanese League, and He and Alfonso Soriano, the left fielder, were teammates in the minor leagues with the Hiroshima organization. Pulled foul. 1997, Kuroda was 22, Soriano was 21, and they were toiling away in the minor leagues in Japan. Soriano played 2 years in the minor leagues and had a big contract dispute with his Japanese club and actually sat out a full season. Did not play at all in '98. Signed with the Yankees that summer and began his professional career here in North America in the Arizona Fall League of 1998. And Sebia hanging tough against Kuroda. Hiroki Kuroda trying to figure things out. It's been a little bit of a rough go for him lately. Last time out, he gave up a season high 7 earned runs against the Rays. Aaron Sebia chops it toward third. Rodriguez not going to have a play. With 2 strikes, Rodriguez was deep at third, and that was just a swinging bunt up the third baseline. Aaron Sebia's aboard.
Alex Rodriguez, for a second, thought maybe he should let this ball go foul. It might roll foul. You can see that he was going to charge hard, and then he goes, whoa, 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 and then it was too late.
You can see where he is even with the bag, and that wasn't going to go foul.
No.
Once he got there, he knew it, and it was too late to make a throw.
Got caught in between.
Right fielder Moises Sierra. Sierra singled to center field his first time up. So many of these Blue Jay players have ties with Tony Pena, the bench coach of the Yankees. Pena managed the Dominican team in the World Baseball Classic this past March. Reyes, Encarnacion, and Sierra all played on that team for Pena. And they won the tournament. Encarnacion very close with Tony Pena. Ball and a strike. Nobody out. Off the plate inside. Blue Jays trying to win the series against the Yankees. Of course, they lost all 10 games against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. 0-10 for the season. Big cut. Again, Kuroda continues to keep the ball out of the middle for the most part. But the Blue Jays have hit him hard when they forced him into the zone.
It's a tough thing to know you're down by 6 runs early in a ball game, and yet have to go back out there and eat up some innings and work on your command, because your next start could depend on that. You might get a feel for it and go back out there your next time.
Save during the Beauty Tone Paint Expert Sale, only at Home Hardware and Building Center locations. Homeowners helping homeowners with expert advice.
Good shot of the skyline of downtown Toronto. CN Tower standing guard above Rogers Center. Aaron Sebia with a short lead at first. He's on the move. Hit and run is on. Anthony Ghost delivers perfectly. Aaron Sebia will go first to third. You talk about a textbook hit and run. Ghost may have broken his bat, but he hit it through the vacated shortstop position as Jeter was covering the bag.
Anthony Ghost, you see right off the end of the bat, and splinters right in his hands. But able to put the ball on the ground. And it almost appeared that he saw Jeter moving that way and just able to go with the pitch, kept his eye on the ball. Good things can happen when you make contact.
I think it's a good idea with young hitters to put the hit and run on. Make them focus on hitting the baseball. That way they don't think about hitting doubles or hitting home runs. Just hit the baseball. And that's what he did, and he was rewarded. Ghost with a big lead at first. Not running. Reyes drives it into center. Aaron Sebia tagging at third. Gardner will throw the ball into second base, and Reyes picks up the sacrifice fly as Aaron Sebia comes across to score the 7th Blue Jays run. 30th RBI for Reyes. The hit and run contributing to that sac fly.
Blue Jays doing a good job of execution right there, manufacturing the run with a couple base hits.
So Ghost is at first. He is going to take a lead against Kuroda, see if he can't get a good jump, maybe run here with 2 outs. Anthony has a foot on the artificial surface. He's going to be chased back by Kuroda. Ghost is 3 for 3 in the big leagues in steal attempts. Ryan Goins 2 for 2 already, scored a pair of runs. Pitch out, nothing doing. Ghost sniffed it out, took a step towards second, and once he saw the catcher jump out, he shut it down. Larry Rivera with the signs, both Goins and Ghost checking him out. They have let Anthony Ghost run with the green light, just to see what kind of judgment he has. Got a good jump, pitches down and away. Stuart, what a release. Oh man, did he get rid of that thing. He turned it loose quickly and throws Ghost out easily the first time Anthony's been caught this season. Watch how quick the catcher gets rid of it. It's on its way in a heartbeat. Jeter's there waiting for it. Guest enjoying a seat upgrade courtesy of TD. Great opportunity to have a nice comfy seat right there in the TD comfort zone, and you're watching the Blue Jays out to an early lead. Curtis Granderson, a little bit different look in the shift tonight as Reyes has come in at shortstop to guard against that bunt. Granderson dropped the bunt down against Jay Happ, and it was a perfectly executed bunt. So Reyes has shortened up at shortstop. You can see Laurie is out in right field. Curtis Granderson, we mentioned he had a conversation with both Anthony Gose and Kevin Pillar before the game, and I spoke to Granderson about that conversation. He said, I was trying to pass along what I do at the plate in the philosophy of Kevin Long, our hitting coach. And it's not uncommon. You see players talking to each other all the time. And of course, Anthony Gose is a young hitter, and so is Kevin Pillar. But Granderson has had tremendous success working with Kevin Long. There he takes ball 4. Before Granderson came to the Yankees, he was almost regarded as a platoon player because he couldn't do much against lefty pitching. Well, Kevin Long fixed that, and he had back-to-back 40 home run seasons coming into this year.
Kevin Long got him believing that he could, and he showed him that he can hit a breaking ball, something that was a real weakness his first few years as a Tiger.
Alfonso Soriano. Soriano grew up in San Pedro de Macorís. And if that name sounds familiar to you, that's where Blue Jays great Tony Fernandez grew up. And Soriano grew up idolizing Fernandez as they were both shortstops. I asked Soriano if he was a Blue Jay fan. He goes, nope, just a Tony Fernandez fan. But when they were kids playing on the sandlots of San Pedro de Macorís, they would all run around saying, I am Tony Fernandez, I am Tony Fernandez. He says foul down the right side.
And the funny thing is, Tony Fernandez did a lot of things you don't want to teach, but he had God-given talent that is off the charts. And you can't blame kids for trying to mimic him, even though their mechanics probably shouldn't have been that way.
He had a lot of things, much like Soriano, had a fluid, wild swing and threw the ball very well from an unorthodox position. 1-2. Another foul back. Those young kids in the Dominican Republic didn't say, I am Tony Fernandez. They said, I am Cabeza, which was Fernandez's nickname. They just called him Cabeza, which meant head in Spanish, and he was always known as Cabeza in his hometown. So as soon as you said, I am Cabeza, everybody knew who you were talking about. 1-2 to Soriano. Blue Jays have a 7-0 lead. They have scored in each of the first 3 innings. Todd Redmond looking for his second win of the season. In the dirt, and that gets away from Aaron Sebia. And that'll go into the dugout. Granderson stops at second, even though the ball went into the dugout. It's one base from the pitcher's mound. And Sebia just kind of went too far, and that ball skipped back over his left shoulder and into the Blue Jays dugout. So Granderson now in scoring position. Full count to Soriano. Ball 4. Back-to-back walks here in the 4th. So you hear the boos, and Alex Rodriguez is coming to the plate. He had a home run in the 5th inning of Game 1 on Monday against R.A. Dickey, an opposite field shot. That was home run number 650 in his career, and here against Esmiel Rogers. Got a breaking ball. He hammers to the seats in center field. 651 for Rodriguez. He's hit more home runs than any player here at Rogers Center, any visiting player, that is.
Todd Redmond going to have to reel it all back in here. First inning, he gives up a leadoff walk. First inning that he gave the leadoff man a chance to be on base, and now back-to-back walks. So we talked about it. Even with the 7-run lead, you're never super comfortable in this ballpark.
Rodriguez takes a strike. Pete Walker with a quick message to Redmond on the mound. You remember when the Yankees swept the Blue Jays in a 4-game series at the Bronx, the Jays had the lead in all 4 games. fastball. Up and down, in and out. It seems as though when he gets that fastball right at the top of the zone, hitters don't pick it up very well. Redmond has 4 strikeouts so far. He's ahead of Rodriguez 0-2. Another pitch upstairs, and Rodriguez just barely got a piece of it. If you were pitching to Alex Rodriguez, just from what you've seen in this series, how would you attack him?
I haven't seen anybody challenge him up and in. I think you've got to push him off the plate in. And then you're going to open up that outside plate. And it's such a cliche. Everybody talks about the same sequence, up and in, down and away, but he is a good off-speed hitter, and he is a good mistake pitch hitter. So you execute your pitches. I just pound him down and in, up and in. Just try to make him try to catch up with pitches.
Breaking ball off the plate. He laid off. 1-2.
Most aging players end up leaving the game of baseball because of their bat speed. They think they're getting to it, but they don't. And that's just reality of the human element. You just slow down.
Time catches up to you. 1-2. There's that fastball, and he couldn't handle it. It's just 91 miles an hour.
Yeah, and that's just not a good swing. There's not much he can do, except if he makes contact, he'll pull it foul. So you just keep pounding in there until he swings over the top of one.
You see in this at bat, Redmond has been all over the strike zone, upstairs, in, out, up and down. Another 1-2 pitch. Breaking ball hammered past Laurie. Granderson's being waved home. Soriano goes first to third, and there's what you're talking about. Played right into his hand. He couldn't catch up to the fastball, but he got the head out on the breaking ball.
The other thing that he did is he left that ball out over the plate. Instead of getting it in where it ties up Alex Rodriguez, the ball's out there where he can get his hands out and make contact. Just good extension right there with the fastball in. He just didn't tie him up. That slider pretty flat, doesn't really do anything.
So Lyle Overbay will bat. Runners at the corner, still nobody out. Leadoff walk. Granderson is coming around to score. Soriano, he walked. He's at third base, and Rodriguez with the RBI singles at first. First pitch strike. Lyle Overbay played here with the Blue Jays. 723 games over 5 seasons with the Jays from 2006 to 2010. He's always been a guy that uses the whole field. Never one noted for power, but he certainly has the ability to hit the ball from gap to gap.
Aaron Loop is going to get busy out in the Blue Jay bullpen. John Gibbons, 7-run lead. Now a 6-run lead with the base hit by Alex Rodriguez. Nobody out.
Fastball that Overbay fouls back to the screen. Pat Redmond, his last time out on Friday against the Astros, went 3 1/3, gave up 8 runs on 8 hits. 7 of those runs were earned, and he had 3 walks in that out. He's got 3 walks here tonight. Overbay drives it into shallow center field. Sierra, the right fielder, calls for it. Ghost makes the catch, and it's too shallow, so Soriano stays at third. Rodriguez still at first. Overbay pops out to center. That's the first out of the inning.
important out right there for Todd Redmond. Now maybe he can get Mark Reynolds to hit a ground ball at one of the infielders and turn a double play.
Mark Reynolds starting for the first time in his big league career at second base. They're standing around the batting cage, and Kevin Long, the hitting coach, said, "You ever play second base before?" He said, "Last night." He said, "When did you play second base last night?" He said, "I came in defensively to play the ninth." First and third, one out. This ball is hit hard to right. Sierra back on the track at the wall. It's over his glove, off the wall. Soriano comes in to score. Rodriguez is being waved home. They've got a shot at Rodriguez. Here's the throw to the plate. He is out. Back to second base, and Reynolds gets back. What a relay by Ryan Goins.
Ryan Goins is showing so much of a big league ability. And it's not a coincidence as far as you and I are concerned, because he's out here every day taking ground balls and making throws. And you can only do that if you practice it. What happened today is John Gibbons had some of the young players, Sierra, Gose, and Pilar, out and made a few throws from the outfield. And one of the things they wanted to do was hit the cutoff man. Well, there was a good throw to the cutoff man, and then Goins made a great throw to JP, who actually blocked the plate.
Watch where the throw is to Goins. It's going to be right to his glove side, and he has it perfectly to make a strong throw to the plate, and Aaron Seavey with the good tag to nail Rodriguez. Textbook execution by the Jays. Ichiro Suzuki fouls it back. Rodriguez had to make sure that ball wasn't caught in right. And once it bounced off the wall, he took off, rounded third, but Gose made a good throw to the relay man, Goins, who in turn made a good throw to Aaron Sebia. 2 outs. Bouncing ball towards second. Big hop for Goins. That'll do it. The Yankees score 2 here in the fourth, and the Blue Jays cut down a runner at the plate. Had a great start to his night tonight.
First at bat, he drives a double past Soriano in left field. Next time up, pulls it past a diving Mark Reynolds for his second hit, and then he's showing the leather too. Gets a good relay and perfect throw to JP at home to get Alex Rodriguez. It looks like this young man is here to stay for a while.
Well, you know, we had heard about Goins and how talented he was. He was a ball player. Many of the coaches down in minor leagues had relayed that message, and the relay throw is what impressed me, because he had his body turned perfectly to the angle, which allows him to really unload that throw in a hurry. and he is a shortstop.
Yeah.
He has really looked comfortable at second.
I'm just going to throw this out there. He was a late round draft choice, and he's had a scratch and claw to get attention because obviously everybody who's drafted in the first 5 to 10 rounds are going to get a premium look. That's what organizations are paying the big money for, those kids in those first rounds. And the kids that down the line like a Ryan Goins going to have to really light up some eyes. But my way of thinking is if you're going to draft 40 guys, give them all a shot and let the best come to the top. And he has finally emerged and gotten his chance. And boy, has he shined since given the opportunity.
We mentioned he led the Eastern League last year in hits. He's just been one of those players that has impressed at every level. And he doesn't do anything that really jumps out at you.
Just steady every day. Baseball.
Doesn't fly, doesn't have great speed, doesn't have a lot of power, but boy, he has good at bats.
Like right there, just tracking the ball all the way in. Guess who does that? A guy named Jeter. It's pretty good. 10th all time.
Yeah, he is pretty good. But then again, you're a baseball guy. You recognize that right away. 2 balls, 2 strikes. Nobody out. Good coverage of that outside pitch.
There was 2 things I noticed as a pitcher that showed me the hitters were really in tune. One was when a hitter tracks a ball like Goins just did there, or Derek Jeter does, and literally eyeballs it, even if it's a strike, they're trying to time a pitch and take a good hard look at it. The other one would be if a hitter comes to the plate and puts his bat basically up on his shoulder and never moves, because there's nothing for me to read, and it drove me crazy. I didn't know if he was setting me up or if I was just being, I didn't know. And at least when he's tracking a ball, you know that he's taking a look at it.
Lays off a tough pitch downstairs. It's a full count. Edwin Encarnacion waiting on deck at a 2-run home run in the second. Another line drive hit hard, but it's going to hang up for Brett Gardner. Goins was right on that pitch.
Save during the Beauty Tone Paint Expert Sale, only at Home Hardware and Building Center locations. Homeowners helping homeowners with expert advice.
Another good crowd on hand here at Rogers Center. Last 2 nights we've had 35,000. Last night 34,000. And another good crowd here tonight. Yankees are always a big draw here at Rogers Center. Edwin Encarnacion 1 for 2. The home run he hit was his 34th of the season. '99 RBIs.
Pretty impressive year for Edwin Encarnacion.
Last year he really broke out on the scene and had a career season. 42 homers, 110 driven in. Hit .280 for the season. And that's why this year is maybe even more impressive, because the word is out. He's developed into a dangerous hitter. He had a 26 homer season way back in 2008 with the Reds. He stays alive, gets a piece of that pitch. But we have talked about it often, about the maturation of Edwin Encarnacion. Blue Jays even sent him back to the minor leagues. They exposed him to waivers. He was taken by Oakland. Oakland put him on waivers. Blue Jays got him back. But there's one thing that you can never question, and that's his work ethic. It's this off the end of the bat. Shallow center. Long run for Gardner. He's going to get there, and he makes the catch. 2 outs. Let's check in with Jamie Campbell. Well, the Orioles certainly trying to calm down that top three in the Boston Red Sox lineup. Ellsbury, Victorino, and Pedroia combined for 9 hits last night, and Victorino had 2 home runs and 7 RBIs, but it's a different story tonight. Bud Norris pitching for the Orioles. Picked up to add some depth to their rotation. He's done just that. John Lackey on the mound for the Red Sox. Then takes a strike. It's 1-1. The Yankees trying to keep pace in the wild card race. Then hits it hard to center field. Gardner back, jumps up and makes the catch. 3 hard hit balls in the inning, but the Blue Jays are down in order. We'll go to the 5th. Blue Jays with a 7-2 lead. Now time for Blue Jays Central Update. Here's Jamie Campbell and Greg Zahn in the Blackberry Broadcast Studio. Of Roberto Alomar. Come see the future of Canadian baseball September 20th through the 24th at Rogers Center. Blue Jays Hall of Famer Roberto Alomar will host a showcase baseball tournament at Rogers Center, highlighting some of Canada's best amateur baseball players with college eligibility. 10 teams from across the country will represent Canadian provinces, with a winner being crowned on September 24th. Tournament passes are now available at bluejays.com/T12. There's a little looper into center. Chris Stewart makes a bid for a base hit, and Anthony Gose. What an effort by Anthony Gose. A determined run to the baseball, and then he just snuck his glove underneath that ball before it could hit the turf. Young players starting to shine for the Blue Jays.
As a pitcher, you can't do it because it takes too much time, but you want to go out and give them a hug. An effort like that, just focus and staying with it. I saw so many of my center fielders do that. Of course, Devon White did it as good as anybody ever in this building. And I swear, there were so many times I wish I could have just gone out and given him a hug.
I never thought of you as a guy that would want to give a hug.
Well, I didn't want the world to know that when I was on the mound.
A ball and a strike. Anthony Gose with a good effort. Made a nice relay throw to Ryan Goings, and they nailed Alex Rodriguez at the plate back in the 4th. Here he takes a hit away from Chris Stewart. Ball and a strike. Fifth inning. Blue Jays with a 7-2 lead.
76 pitches now for Todd Redmond, so he needs to get through this inning without a lot of damage.
Well, I think Todd Redmond recognized that he's on a short leash. You saw that last inning.
Well, he's pitched very well. First 3 innings pretty comfortable. innings for him, and then he had a little hiccup there in the fourth, lead off 2 walks.
We had mentioned this is the first start for Redmond against the Yankees, and it reflected that first time through the order. He handled them very well, but the next time through the order, 3 walks. Starting to get an idea of what he's featuring and how he can command the strike zone. Off the plate. Full count.
And another thing so different about this pitch count era is you rarely face a guy 4 times anymore, let alone 5.
We had that discussion with Larry Rothschild, the pitching coach for the Yankees. Rothschild, longtime pitching coach, first with Florida, then managed the Rays, and then pitching coach for the Cubs, and now here with New York. And he feels like you that pitchers need to throw more. Gardner spoils another pitch, hits it down the left side. But there are so many theories about arm strength. You guys were talking about long toss and weighted balls and all kinds of things. What do you think the optimum activity is for a pitcher to keep him healthy?
I think you just need to throw off the mound as much as you possibly can. Long toss is something I do not believe in. I think it's just an accident waiting to happen, because in order to throw the ball far, you have to throw it uphill. When you're on the mound, you don't throw uphill, you throw downhill.
There has certainly not been any definitive studies that have put together a formula for health, that's for sure. But when you go back to the 60s and 70s, guys threw 300 innings, and they didn't seem to have as many injuries as we're dealing with now. Derek Jeter with 1 out and a man at first. Tried to check and went around. Jeter had a double down into the right field corner his first time up. Curtis Granderson is on deck. That is the danger of this lineup. You get a couple of guys on, somebody pops one, and it's a brand new game.
Todd walking off the mound, recognizing that he just flew wide open on that pitch, spun off of it. Not a good pitch. He just got to slow his body down. He may be getting a little tired in the legs. And that's a good indication that that may be happening, because he's starting to fly open a little.
Inside, Jeter lays off. So Pete Walker is making his way to the mound while they're on the phone to the bullpen. Somebody's going to start throwing down in the Blue Jays bullpen. You could see Luke, he's already been up once, and there's the call.
Well, Pete recognized it too. He saw the last 2 pitches, Todd's flown open, and he's got to finish the ball towards the catcher's glove. His body and his upper body energy's got to go towards the glove, and when he starts flying open, you can see his upper body shifting towards the first baseline. And that's where you lose command of your pitches. Pete reminding him to keep that front shoulder in and finish off towards home plate.
Now, we've been talking about the Japanese pitchers and their ability to repeat their delivery because of the repetition they establish early in their career. Hiroki Kuroda's not had a good night by any means, but the ability to repeat your delivery that's the heart and soul of pitching. There goes Gardner. Jeter fouls it off. Gardner was on the move on the 2-1 pitch.
Just smart base running right there by Brett Gardner, recognizing that pitching coaches came out and he's got to focus on throwing a strike, so he's probably not focusing on me.
You can see Gardner on that left hand has that protective mitten to guard his fingers and thumbs from injury with that head first slide. They dive back into first. So many base stealers slide head first now. They feel like it's quicker getting to the bag. But I'll tell you one thing that it does. It certainly doesn't cause any concern by the middle infielders. They're not worried about spikes coming down their way.
No, if you knew that everybody was going to slide head first, you'd drop your knee and block the bag.
Two and two. Peter waves at it and strikes out. Second time he's gone down swinging tonight.
Big strikeout for Todd right there. Number 5 on the night.
He's gotten Jeter to chase this slider a couple of times tonight. You can see it was beyond the end of his bat. Another good indication they don't pick up the spin on his breaking ball when he throws it down and away.
Also a good indication that Derek Jeter is in mid-season form, because that's a pitch he doesn't offer at very often.
Well, you know this, having pitched so long, that's the last thing that comes for a hitter, their ability to hit breaking pitches. And he's in spring training, despite the fact we're in late August. Curtis Granderson lays off that inside pitch. Bob Davison, the umpire down at third base, signaling no swing. One ball, 2 strikes. Redmond with 5 strikeouts so far, trying to close out the 5th. Aaron Loup continues to throw in the Blue Jays bullpen. Gloved by Encarnacion. He takes a hit away from Curtis Granderson. He's done it with the bat. He's done it with the glove. The Blue Jays have been outstanding on defense. Encarnacion takes away extra bases from Curtis Granderson. He breaks on the pitch and goes to his right and snares it. That ends the inning. Good defense all over the field for the Jays tonight. August 30th, the Blue Jays will take on the Kansas City Royals. Game time is 7:07 p.m. Come on down to Rogers Center early and check out the pre-game festivities happening outside of Gate 10. Win great prizes, enjoy the live music, and there's a licensed area. Gates open at 4:30 p.m. Call the Blue Jays for tickets at 416-341-1234. Log on to BlueJays.com and order your tickets for Summer Fan Friday festivals, or you can always stop by most Rogers Plus locations. Another good crowd on hand tonight. Blue Jays will have Thursday off, and Kansas City comes to town Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Then the Blue Jays will head out west for some interleague play. The Arizona Diamondbacks. Former Blue Jay Aaron Hill had a big hit last night, a walk-off hit for the Diamondbacks in the 10th inning. The Diamondbacks, that was their 11th walk-off win of the season, and their 38th come from behind win. The Blue Jays will be there on Labor Day Monday. Boy, doesn't Laurie look good at the plate?
I was going to say he's upset with himself for missing that hanging breaking ball, but a couple months ago he wouldn't even come close to that pitch, so it shows the progress he's making.
1-2. Kuroda got him to chase one down. Time now for the smooth move of the game, brought to you by Bacardi Oakart Smooth Spiced Rum. Bacardi is a proud partner of the Toronto Blue Jays. Tonight we're going to talk about smooth defense. As you see, Anthony Ghost slides his glove underneath this pop-up off the bat of Chris Stewart. Takes away a hit. That was the first play of the inning. Then Curtis Granderson, the last play of the inning. Another fine defensive play by Edwin Encarnacion to end the inning. Good glove work all over the field for the Blue Jays. Rajay Davis taps it back to the mound. 2 down. Edwin Encarnacion with his 34th home run of the season. And that good play at first. Anthony Ghost with a strong throw to the relay man, Ryan Goins, who threw to the plate. J.P. Arencibi. They tagged out Alex Rodriguez, cut down the runner at the plate. School is in session. Chad Mottola talking to 2 young hitters on the bench. Arencibi drives it toward the alley in right center. That's going to split the outfielders and go to the wall. Arencibi will jog into second with his second hit of the night. His 17th double of the season comes with 2 outs here in the 5th.
It's amazing to me how certain hitters own certain pitchers. Talked about it before the game, how JP has got very good numbers against Hiroki Kuroda. And you can almost see why. He makes mistakes, and JP finally hits him.
With 2 hits tonight, J.P. Arencibi is 9 for 21 against Hiroki Kuroda. Sierra tried to check and went around. Moises Sierra has one of the Blue Jays' 9 hits. Jabba Chamberlain starting to loosen up for the Yankees. Kuroda's thrown 96 pitches. Blue Jays had a bat around inning in the first to send 9 men to the plate, scored 4 runs. They've done a nice job of laying off those borderline pitches tonight.
It hasn't been a typical night for Kuroda. But again, you mentioned one of the reasons. The Jays been lucky enough not to be swinging out of the zone.
It says popped up Overbay, the first baseman, over near the seats. It's out of play.
Chris Stewart out on the mound talking to Kuroda, trying to figure out this could be final pitch of the inning. What do you want to throw? If you miss, what do you want to come back with?
Two balls and 2 strikes. Arencibi in scoring position at second. Off the end of the bat, lifted into right field. Suzuki moves under it, and the inning is over. The Blue Jays have a 7-2 lead. We'll head to the 6th, and here comes the Home Hardware cleanup crew, brought to you by Natura. Home Hardware's exclusive line of safe, environmentally friendly cleaning products. A new one-hour show called Fox Football Daily. You'll see guys like Randy Barber, Randy Moss, and Brian Urlacher. They'll have all the latest news and analysis. Fox Football Daily, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Weekdays on Sportsnet 1. You certainly will want to check it out. Get ready for your NFL fantasy leagues. And just around the corner, September 5th, Thursday night. Opening night for the NFL. Alfonso Soriano. Boy, Soriano has done a great job of adding life to this team. They were really desperate for right-handed power, and he has fit the bill. Soriano's now 37 years old. When he first came up with the Yankees, he credits Derek Jeter, Bernie Williams, and Mariano Rivera with his early success. He said, when I first joined the team, those three guys, all future Hall of Famers, took me in like I was one of their own. They treated me equally and made me feel really comfortable. And he strikes out. Good breaking ball. 6 strikeouts now for Redmond.
Save during the Beauty Tone Paint Expert Sale, only at Home Hardware and Building Center locations. Homeowners helping homeowners with expert advice.
Blue Jays lead at 7-2 as the Yankees are batting in the 6th. Alex Rodriguez, another fastball, and he just can't get the head out.
No, that was a very hittable fastball too, but Alex just a little slow right now.
Hit a home run against Dickey on a knuckleball. Hit a breaking ball off Ismail Rogers to center field, and then his base hit last time up was a breaking ball.
Ball right down the middle. And he's fooled by it because he's sitting on breaking ball. You got to recognize that as a pitcher. When a guy takes a look like that and it surprises him, he's not ready for it.
So Aaron Sebia offered 3 pitches. Redmond didn't like any of them, so he stepped off the rubber. Redmond is ahead 0-2. Has 6 strikeouts so far tonight. Dropped down and missed with the fastball. Breaking ball way outside. Lyle Overbay is on deck. Aaron Loop has warmed up. He appears to be ready down in the bullpen, and that's the magic number. Rodriguez fouls off the fastball and strikes out. 2 down. Let's check in with Jamie Campbell. Thank you, Jamie. Homer Bailey hasn't allowed a hit through his first 2 innings, and Wainwright, boy, he got hammered. 2 innings, 9 earned runs, and Todd Redmond gets a couple of strikeouts here in the 6th and leaves to a nice ovation. Jamie. Jay Bruce now with 87 RBIs on the season. Aaron Loop in to face Lyle Overbay. So Todd Redmond goes 5 2/3. Punches out 7, including 2 here in the 6th.
Pitch count again kind of getting a little bit on the wrong side for Todd, but that's because of 7 strikeouts and 4 walks. Only 3 hits allowed. Both of the walks that started the 4th inning came in to score.
Overbay bounces it towards second. Goins waits on it, and the inning is over. Luke comes in and quietly retires. Overbay, we're going to the bottom of the 6th. Todd Redmond in line for his 2nd win of the season. You'll follow games pitch by pitch and enjoy in-game video highlights. The app is available on the iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, Android, and BlackBerry Z10. Season-long subscription packages are available. Visit BlueJays.com for more details. At Bat 13 is the official app of Major League Baseball. New pitcher into the ball game is the big right-hander Java Chamberlain, making his 38th appearance of the season.
Java, one of those guys that always was looked at as going to be the next great thing, and just has been thrown back and forth over the years, early in his career, from starter to bullpen, back to starter, and back into the bullpen, where he's pretty much settled in. Fastball primarily been his number one pitch over his career. He's approached 100 miles an hour at times.
Java Chamberlain really came on the scene in a big way his first season with the Yankees in 2007. Anthony goes, bunts it right back to the mound. Easy play for Chamberlain. One down. Let's check in again with Jamie Campbell. Thank you, Jamie. Chris Davis not only hitting home runs, he's hitting for an average. He's hitting .304 with 2 more hits tonight. And Davis now has 120 RBIs. Baltimore and Boston going head-to-head at Fenway Park. Baltimore at the start of play tonight, 6.5 back of the front-running Red Sox. Tampa Bay had a tough loss last night. They had a 4-run lead at one point, and Fernando Rodney coughed it up in the top of the ninth. Pat Redmond talking with the veteran Mark Burley. Java Chamberlain in the ballgame in relief of the starter Hiroki Kuroda, and Kuroda had another rough night. Lined hard but foul. He mentioned Chris Davis hitting his 47th home run. That's the 3rd highest total in Oriole franchise history. As Jamie mentioned, Brady Anderson hit 50 in 1996, and Frank Robinson hit 49 in his MVP season in 1966. Reyes bounces it up the middle. Mark Reynolds makes a good play. Reyes is retired. 2 quick outs. Pat Redmond had a couple of strikeouts in the 6th, and then he gave way to the reliever Aaron Loop. He goes 5 2/3. Once again, doesn't give up many hits. The 4 walks proved costly, as 2 of those walks came in to score. Through 101 pitches, he's looking for his 2nd win of the season.
The Jays spotted him with a little cushion early in the game. At one time he had a 7-run lead. Now that's dwindled down to a 5-run lead. But a good effort by Redmond. Pitch count kind of biting him a little bit. But he'll take it, and the Jays will take it. Now it's up to the bullpen to do what they've been doing all year long, closing out the last part of the ballgame.
Brian Goins, 2 for 3. And lined out to center field in his at bat in the 4th. You know, you talk about a young player coming up the big leagues. It's kind of interesting, but conditions are much better to hit up here than they are in the minor leagues.
Pitchers have a better idea of the strike zone, and that does really transfer to a borderline type player. When he knows the ball's going to be in the strike zone around that more, his focus can be sharper. And a lot of players that don't exactly light it up in the minor leagues get a chance in the big leagues, and they become stars. Same can be true, Buck, about pitchers. I remember a couple rehab starts in the minor leagues, and I went down there and I threw balls, and you couldn't throw it past these kids. They were swinging. They had a grandma to call. They had their mother to call to tell, hey, I got to hit off a big leaguer. And they were swinging by the time you cocked.
Get your arm up over your ear, and they were swinging. 2-2, 2 outs. Jabba Chamberlain in his first inning of relief. Well, I tell you what, it's only been about a week's worth of games, but Ryan Goins has some good at-bats. This guy's had good at-bats for the last several years. Edwin Encarnacion with a home run in the second.
It makes a Blue Jay fan smile to see a player like Goins and what he's doing. Takes a walk right there, so quite a night for Ryan Goins.
Now it's time for the drive of the game, brought to you by the 2013 Honda CR-V and IIHS Top Safety Pick. Honda is the official vehicle of the Toronto Blue Jays. And tonight our drive of the game will be in the second inning with a man aboard, Edwin Encarnacion against Hiroki Kuroda. Skies it to left, but he gets enough of it to send it over the wall for his 34th home run of the season. RBIs numbered 98 and 99 for Edwin. On the ground, Jeter waits. It's short. They go to second for the force out. The inning is over. Blue Jays get a 2-out walk and nothing else. We'll go to the seventh. Aaron Luke. Center start Tuesday, September 17th at 7:07 p.m. 3 night games, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night. Blue Jays will take on the Yankees. You can call the Blue Jays at 416-341-1234 to pick up your Blue Jays Yankees tickets. Log on to BlueJays.com and order your tickets, or you can stop by most Rogers Plus locations. That'll be the second to last homestand. The Yankees will wrap up that 3-game series. The Blue Jays will go to Boston, Chicago, and Baltimore, and then come home for the final weekend of the season against the Tampa Bay Rays. Games are being ticked off very quickly. We are here in the 28th of August. Remember, the Kansas City Royals will be here over the weekend, and the Blue Jays are going to see their best. Irvin Santana, Jeremy Guthrie, and James Shields slated to start for the Royals. Kansas City has made some nice strides this season. They're riding a 3-game win streak as we speak. 3 games over 500 at 70, 67, and 64. Probably a little too far out of the picture. They're 7 back in the wild card race. But you got to knock on the door before you can kick it in.
Well, the mere fact that they're not in the cellar of the Central Division is a huge plus. They've been living there for a few years.
Mark Reynolds with an 0-2 count fouls it off. Baseball is certainly international. Dominican Republic and Japan, things still are the same on the bench. 0-2. Line drive into left field. That'll get down for a base hit. Mark Reynolds has his second hit of the night. A leadoff single in the 7th. Sergio Santos cranking it up down in the bullpen. Loop came in to end the 6th. Remember, Robinson Cano is injured, probably unavailable. He's got his hand heavily wrapped. He was hit on his left hand last night in the 1st inning, so you don't have to worry about his bat for a few days, I'm sure. Suzuki takes one outside. Ichiro has lined out to the 3rd baseman and grounded out to 2nd. There's a strike. It's 1-1. Aaron Loop has really developed into a very reliable lefty pitcher, and it doesn't make any difference. Left-handed batter, right-handed batter, he can handle them equally effective. His changeup has really added another dimension to his pitching this year.
He does such a good job of locating that changeup. It's 8 to 10 miles an hour slower than his fastball, and of course his real plus is his arm angle coming basically from second base.
Encarnacion will go to second. They get the lead runner, and that's all they'll get. Encarnacion fired to Reyes, who forced Reynolds at second. Had no chance to get Ichiro as he runs way too well. So that's the first out of the top half of the 7th.
Edward right here showing his defense again, coming up with another very good play, going to second base to get the lead runner. Possibility of turning a double play there, but with Ichiro running, not the easiest thing to do.
Catcher Chris Stewart takes a strike. Stewart has flied out twice. Stewart had a big pass ball in the 1st inning. It actually led to 2 runs. The Blue Jays had scored 2 runs on a double by Brett Lawrie. J.P. Arancibia was called out on strike 3, but it bounced off Stewart's glove, went for a pass ball. Arancibia reached, and on the throw to first base, Stewart committed an error that allowed both runs to come in to score. That's a foul ball. It was a very peculiar inning, and it all started with a 2-out walk with a man at second base, and from there Brett Lawrie had a double. Davis was hit by a pitch, and then the strikeout of Arancibia led to 2 runs, capped off the 4-run 1st inning. That bends around the outside corner. Top of the 7th. This is the rubber game of this 3-game series. The Yankees won the opener. Blue Jays took last night's game, and now the Jays have a 5-run lead. Full count. Leadoff man Brett Gardner is waiting on deck. Suzuki at first base. Changeup, and a good one. In a good spot. Stewart strikes out.
Come find out why more Canadians trust Mr. Lube's trained technicians with their oil changes than any other quick lube. We're #1 for a reason. Take good care.
Open air baseball at Rogers Center. Started this game. The roof was closed, but the clouds have moved away, and it's a beautiful night. Top of the order, Brett Gardner has struck out and walked twice. Luke gets ahead with a strike.
Aaron Loup has got a little slower pace than Todd Redmond. The game's moving a little slower, but very important inning for him and the Jays right here.
Gardner slashes it into the seats.
2 quick strikes on Brett Gardner. See if Loopy might throw that slider here. Keep it down and away on a changeup.
He certainly has plenty of options ahead 0-2.
Fastball away.
Good pitch. Gardner strikes out on 3 pitches. 2 strikeouts in the inning. We'll go to the bottom of the 7th. Adam Lind has walked and scored. Brett Laurie had a 2-run double in the first, and Rajay Davis. August 31st, the Blue Jays take on the Kansas City Royals. The game starts at 1:07 p.m. There are special kids prize tickets in the 200 and 500 level outfield seats. After the game, kids 14 and under can run the bases just like the pros. Call the Blue Jays at 416-341-1234. Log on to BlueJays.com and stop by most Rogers Plus locations. Junior Jays Saturday, always a big hit here at Rogers Center. Lots of great young fans out, and they drank their mom and dad along too. Adam Lind will start things off for the Jays here in the bottom of the 7th. Java Chamberlain, second inning of work. Lind had a big at bat in the first inning against Hiroki Kuroda. He worked him for a 2-out walk. That set the table for Brett Laurie's 2-run double. Two balls and a strike. Breaking ball catches the outside corner. We mentioned Chamberlain really made a splash when he came on the scene in 2007. He went from A-ball Tampa all the way through the system up to the Yankees and pitched in 19 games at the end of the season. And really became a hit in the Bronx. He threw a total of 24 innings, had 34 strikeouts and just 6 walks. He looks like he was going to be the heir apparent to Mariano Rivera as the closer. And then things kind of got derailed as they tried him in a starting role. He started 12 games in 2008, 31 games in 2009. He bounces that ball right off the forearm of Chris Stewart.
And that hurts. Chris Stewart went down to block that ball. The ball hopped, came up and bit him right there above the glove and the wrist or the forearm. Inner part of his hand, you're going to see it right here. Opens the glove, it bounces and comes up off the wrist, right on the bone. Ouch.
Lynn strikes out. That's the first out of the seventh. Hiroki Kuroda really had a tough game tonight. He fell behind early. He gave up 4 runs, just 2 earned runs in the first inning on 3 hits and an error. Overall, he went 5 innings. Charged with 5 earned runs, 9 hits, a walk, and 4 strikeouts. He threw a total of 99 pitches over his 5 innings of work. That's an area of concern for the New York Yankees. They're starting pitching. They have an older starting staff with Kuroda and Pettit. Andy Pettit pitched a whale of a game here last night. He went 6 innings, pitched very effectively, and beat the Blue Jays for the 2nd consecutive start. One and 2 to Brett Lawrie. Laurie's had another 2-hit night tonight. His average creeping up toward 270. It's a 266 now. He's raised his average 67 points since July 22nd, just over a month. Stays on top of it, but hits it right to the second baseman, Reynolds. Rajay Davis will step in the box against Jabba Chamberlain with 2 outs. Davis was hit by a pitch in the first inning, came all the way around to score.
The Blue Jays have done all their damage in the first 3 innings. Since the 3rd, they've kind of gone quietly. Things have slowed down considerably. Whoa.
Rajay lost the grip on that bat handle and it flew past Aaron Seavey, who was standing on deck. When a hitter is off balance and his timing is disrupted, you can see he doesn't have a very good grip on that bat, and that's what happened with Davis. Looked in his hands in disbelief as that bat just flew out of his batting gloves. Hits this to third. Rodriguez has it. Easy inning for Jabba Chamberlain. The Jays go in order in the 7th. We'll go to the 8th. The Blue Jays have a 5-run lead against the Yankees. New pitcher into the ballgame for the Blue Jays is the right-hander Sergio Santos. He's making his 16th appearance of the season. Aaron Luke came in and did a good job. He goes a total of an inning and a third, and he closed out the 6th inning. So now he turns things over to the right-hander Santos.
Since being recalled after his setback this year, Sergio Santos has really commanded his pitches a lot better, and that has got him kind of a steady roll. Steve Delabar on the DL right now, and with Delabar gone, Santos has really been called on to replace him. You can see Chris Stewart getting wrapped right there, a little pressure wrap, put a little padding on that bruise that he acquired, that breaking ball in the dirt from Jabba Chamberlain.
Just trying to make sure it doesn't swell up and knock him out of this game. Boy. Steve Donahue, the trainer's been busy in this series.
Boy.
Of course, Cano was hit in the first inning of last night's game, and then Eduardo Nunez caught his spikes and fell down at second base last night, and he would eventually leave the game in the 9th inning. Jeter takes his strike. Nunez, he took a lot of grief from his teammates last night after the game. He fell down, looked like he was going to have to leave the game, stayed in the game, and then he got a base hit in his next at bat. But they had to make sure that they got him out of there, and he was lifted in favor of the pinch runner.
You see it more with the Yankees because of the veteran ball players on the team. They kid around a lot. They laugh a lot. Their coaches laugh a lot. They have fun together. And yet it's in a crazy sort of way, a dysfunctional group.
Jeter slices this to right. Sierra was shaded over toward the foul line. Here is Nunez last night. The ball was hit off Jeter's glove, and Nunez was just going to go out for center field. He caught his spikes and fell in a heap. And it took a long time as the trainer came out to examine him, and his is pregame. Talk about veterans giving him a hard time.
That's Jabba
Chamberlain. Scene of the crime.
Yeah. Vernon Wells laying down there trying to put the body part down there, and of course Jabba having a little fun with the tape.
Now that's a great part of the camaraderie of a ball club. You mentioned veteran guys, and Jeter's as big an instigator as anybody. And he'll lead the chorus during BP, and he's always chattering, getting on somebody, making sure nobody sloughs off. Curtis Granderson, big swing and a miss. He's behind 0-2. But he's the captain. He sets the tone for this ball club. He's been doing it ever since he got here. He was a teammate of his manager, Joe Girardi. And I'm sure Girardi appreciates the leadership that Jeter brings to the ball club. Strike 3 count, Sergio Santos. That's what you were talking about, Jack. He's made much better quality pitches since he's come off the DL.
Finishes them off with a good changeup right here. Keeps it away, a little bit up, but good movement right there. Serge has definitely done a good job since he's been recalled.
3 strikeouts for the bullpen. Lupe had a pair of strikeouts. Santos gets his first. Alfonso Soriano, 2 outs. Nothing like strike 1. That's sweet music to John Gibbons.
Soriano jumped on the first fastballs he saw yesterday off of Jay Happ. But here late in the game, trailing by 5 runs, Joe Girardi may have the take on, at least for one pitch.
Slider, and he is behind quickly. Santos hasn't been able to stay healthy since he's come to the Blue Jays, but this is what they thought they got when they acquired Santos from Chicago. 0-2. Fastball hit hard to right, but that's going to slice into the seats out of play. The bullpen has been one bright spot for the ball club in an otherwise disappointing season. And even in this month of August, they have tailed off somewhat, due in part, I'm sure, to the workload. Soriano stays alive. Casey Jansen, he hasn't worked much at all lately because they haven't had many save opportunities.
Casey got his last save down in Houston, last game down there. Save number 24 on the year.
Strike three called. Santos with a pair of strikeouts in a perfect inning. Will go to the bottom of the eighth. The Blue Jays have a 7-2 lead. Now it's time for a Blue Jays Central Update. Here's Jamie Campbell and Greg Zahn in the Blackberry Broadcast Studio. Appearance of the season. Kelly last worked on Sunday down in Tampa Bay. And he's done a pretty good job of retiring the first batters, 36 for 48 this season. He's on to work the eighth inning in relief of Java Chamberlain. Kelly will face the bottom third of the Blue Jays order. J.P. Arancibia, Moises Sierra, and Anthony Gose. Blue Jays got off to a quick start. They were up 6-0 after 2. They hit Hiroki Kuroda hard. They had 6 runs on 6 hits through 2 innings. Then it's been kind of tough sledding for the Blue Jays offensively. They managed just 1 run on 3 hits the rest of the way. But the Blue Jays pitchers have made it stand up. Arancibia takes one up and away. JP's had a 2-hit night tonight. That strike makes it 1-1.
Another great crowd here at Rogers Center. Beautiful evening. Roof open.
This is the biggest crowd of the series tonight. 36,565. The 3-game series total, 105,853. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The fans continue to support this ball club very well.
And the Blue Jays just 3 outs away, the bottom of the 9th, from winning the series against the Yankees. Something they haven't done in a while.
Arancibia hits it off the end of the bat. Soriano comes in, makes the catch. One out. Let's check in with Jamie Campbell. Pittsburgh picked up 36 home runs in that trade. Marlon Byrd came over with 21 home runs. John Buck had 15. And Moises Sierra was trying to hit one to Oshawa. He almost corkscrewed himself into the ground. He had such a big swing.
Those are swings that they wouldn't take twice a generation ago.
Well, they wouldn't. The second one wouldn't take place. The first one might have.
Well, that's my point. They wouldn't take two a generation ago.
0-1. Breaking ball, and Sierra stays on it. He gets his second hit of the night. Did a good job of hitting that slider. This copyrighted telecast is presented by authority of Rogers Blue Jays Baseball Partnership. It may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form. And the accounts and descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without the express written consent of Rogers Blue Jays Baseball Partnership. Now, Joe Girardi, after the one-out base hit, has come out to the mound to make a pitching change. They're going to bring the left-hander in to face Anthony Gose. Sean Kelly gives up a one-out base hit, and he is pulled in favor of the left-hander Boone Logan, who will face Anthony Gose. Logan working in his 55th game. He, too, like Kelly, worked on Sunday at Tampa Bay. That was his last outing, so Joe Girardi thinks that Logan needs a little bit of work here, so he has cranked him up to face Anthony Gose. The Yankees, like the Blue Jays, will have tomorrow off. Then they will go home to take on the Orioles. 3-game series over the weekend. Chicago comes in for 3, and then the Boston Red Sox for 4. So it's a 10-game homestand when the Yankees go back to New York and pick it up on Friday night. Anthony Gose had a base hit back in the 3rd inning. Logan misses with the first pitch. We are in the 8th inning, and the Blue Jays have had the lead all night long. Ghost fouls it up the left side. Boone Logan is a workhorse for Joe Girardi. Last year, he appeared in a career-high 80 games. It was the most by a Yankee left-hander in franchise history. He used him a lot. Oftentimes, it was a batter or two, and he was out.
You think about that, that's nearly half of the games that they play.
Boone Logan, late getting off the bag. The only play they have is to go to second. They get Sierra on the force at second base. Well, the Yankees are getting almost to the point of no return. You can see they are 5 games back of the Athletics for that second wild card spot. 5 games in the loss column, 4.5 games in the standings. Tampa Bay has the first wild card spot, Athletics the second, then the Indians, the Orioles, and the Yankees. So the Yankees are going to have to get on a hot streak if they hope to get to the postseason. They dug a hole for themselves early in this season. They're going to have a chance to play the Orioles quite a bit. They've got 7 more games with the Orioles. They've got 7 more with the Red Sox as well. Interesting that they have the San Francisco Giants at home for 3 games. September 20th, 21st, and 22nd.
The Giants currently in last place in the National League West. They're 18 games out, 59 and 73. So it's not the Giants that were world champions last year, or even the Giants that were playing early in the season.
Well, the interesting series will be the final series of the season for the Yankees. If they can keep it close within striking distance, they will be in Houston to take on the Astros the final weekend of the series. And of course, we have seen the way the ball flies out of that ballpark, and the Yankees would have an opportunity to maybe push their way into the postseason, but they've got to make up some ground before they get there. Anthony Gose was caught stealing in the 3rd inning. Chris Stewart made a heck of a throw. First time Gose has been caught this season. Reyes took a wild swing at that pitch down and away.
Sometimes hitters just make up their mind they're swinging. I'm convinced of that. They're guessing maybe fastball. I'm going to get one inner half or outer half. Once they commit, they just follow through. Pitching or hitting coaches just hate it when hitters just take half swings. So you might as well let her go.
Swing hard in case you hit it. 3-1 to Reyes. In the bottom of the 8th inning, Boone Logan came in the ballgame to face Anthony Gose, and Gose hit into the fielder's choice. He's at first. Sierra was out at second. Blue Jays with 7 runs on 10 hits. The Yankees with 2 runs on 4 hits. Reyes bounces it to Jeter. They toss to second. That'll end the inning. We'll go to the 9th. The Blue Jays trying to win the series. The veteran Darren Oliver will come on to pitch tonight. For the last time this season and your final opportunity to see the great Mariano Rivera. It'll start September 17th, 3-night game, 17th, 18th, and 19th. For tickets, call the Blue Jays at 416-341-1234. Log on to BlueJays.com. Stop by most Rogers Plus locations. The great Mariano Rivera winding things down. He is on a farewell tour all season long.
Those games in September will be the last time that Mariano, a future first-round Hall of Famer, will visit Rogers Center wearing a Yankee uniform as a player.
Inside, Alex Rodriguez jumps back from an inside pitch. Rodriguez pops it toward the seats down the right side. That's going to reach the seats. Rodriguez has singled in 3 at-bats, drove in a run in the 4th. He was gunned down at the plate on a beautiful relay by Brian Goins. Strikes out for a 3rd time tonight. Now for a preview of what's coming up on Connected. Here's Ken Reed and Aaron Hawksworth. Thank you, Ken and Aaron, and you'll be up to speed with everything around the sports world right after this ball game. Connected. Yasiel Puig, very talented, very excitable, emotional young player. And Don Mattingly certainly doesn't want to have anything go sideways at this point of the season. Oliver quickly ahead of Overbay, 0-2.
Amazing what has happened in LA with the Dodgers, where they were just prior to the All-Star game, where Don Mattingly was as a manager, probably close to being considered to be fired. And he decided that he was going to go out his way if he's going to get fired.
And Oliver makes quick work of Lyle Overbay, 2 down. But you're right, isn't it interesting? All of a sudden they get Hanley Ramirez back. Yasiel Puig comes up from the minor leagues, and Mattingly's a genius again. Don Mattingly didn't deserve the rumors that were surrounding him for sure.
No, he is a quality person and knows the game of baseball inside and out. But the Dodgers themselves turned things around completely in first place in the National League West. 8.5 game lead over the Diamondbacks.
Mark Reynolds gets a base hit on the first pitch. Reynolds with a 3-hit night. His first night as the starting second baseman. Filling in for 2 injured infielders, Robinson Cano and Eduardo Nunez, and Reynolds with a 3-hit effort. He has 3 of the 5 Yankee hits tonight.
And he's done a good job on defense.
So there are 2 outs. Ichiro Suzuki is 0 for 3. Blue Jays trying to take the series 2-1. Strike 1 to Ichiro. This would be just the 3rd win for the Jays against New York this season. That's a fair ball. This should do it. Encarnacion goes to the bag, and the Blue Jays win it. Darren Oliver has a good inning in the 9th. Just up a 2-out single and nothing more. And the Blue Jays indeed win the series 2-1. Off day tomorrow for the Jays. The Royals will be in town Friday night. Mark Burley will open it up against Irvin Santana. Stay tuned. Ken Reed, Aaron Hawksworth, Connected, coming right up.